how are we doing on this fine, wonderful day? My name is Dr. Gregory Clarke Sr., and it is a pleasure and an honor to be with you for the Leaders Live Generously Summit. And what I'm going to be presenting today is some excerpts from an upcoming book that I'm working on. And, it's about, being powerful, not only in your leadership, but in your listening. Because, see, sometimes if you can listen correctly and competently, then you can effectively lead. You cannot lead without listening. So once again, we're about to get into this powerful presentation. Sit back, take your notes, be able to be, inspired. And also, once the book is released, hopefully that you will be a participant in purchasing a copy so that we can continue the conversation when it comes to being powerful in your listening. So once again, let me start to share that screen. Let's get to that, share that screen, share. Where'd you go? Where'd you go? There we go. There we go. We're gonna share my screen, add some sound, and this is wonderful. And once again, I wish to thank Dr. Anthony Shannon Sr. for the opportunity and the possibility of sharing on this respective platform. When someone is willing to be transformational in their process of allowing others to be on their platform, that shows not only a wealth of power, but it shows a wealth of experience. And so once again, Dr. Anthony Shannon, thank you for the opportunity to share today. And once again, let me get into presentation mode. So we are good. Yeah, let's present the full screen. That's right. That's right. Now, once again, as you can see on the screen, the power of listening, transforming leadership and relationships, a comprehensive guide to listening centered leadership by myself, Dr. Gregory H. Clarke Sr. And I'm happy to be here with you today, and let's go forward. Now, welcome to today's presentation. Be prepared to take notes. This is not really a question and answering presentation, but this is one that we can be presented and thoughtful in what it is that we are receiving in regards to being powerful in our leadership and how we can transform relationships around ourselves. Hello, once again, my name is Gregory. Hey, smile, look at that smile, look at that smile. I'm a certified master life coach who specializes in educational techniques. Along with my over 30 years of experience as a minister, I have shaped observational and listening protocols during this time frame. And what does that mean? One of the things that I'm very technologically savvy, one of the things at times that even as you should always get feedback, I could be a little stern, but I'm very stern through love, because one of the things that I've recognized is that regardless of wherever we at in our experience, we have the ability to learn something. So always position yourself in a space to always be a learner. And once again, I'm excited to do this presentation with you on this fine day. Now, the introduction. Listening as the cornerstone of effective leadership. As I stated earlier, if you're not willing to be a listener, you cannot lead. Please don't feel that you're in the space where you're only taking advantage of just barking out orders or giving out respective directives. But without listening and being in the space to be observant in your listening, then you will never be effective in your leadership. And the key themes that we will go through this particular presentation, we'll deal with vulnerability, that also shows leadership. Confidence in others shows your possibilities in growing your leadership, and to be non-judgmental in your communication. And one of the things that I've learned over this time frame is that in certain respects, in responding to my own personal personality, I am a judge. I am someone that is a judge. That means I'm very critical. I can be very upfront. I can be very direct. But you can still be non-judgmental and be a judge. You can still be non-judgmental and still be in the spaces where, even though you may be being direct with certain things, you're still allowing yourself to be established, to be open to the possibilities in your listening. And some of the objectives today: building trust, fostering innovation, and creating cohesive teams. Now, when you're creating a team, remember that there's always going to be different aspects of the team that will have qualities that will not be like yours. And that is okay. That's what you necessarily need. If you only dealt with individuals who are just like you, it would be a very boring experience. So once again, those different nuances are there to be stimulative to develop your listening and also to develop your transformational leadership. The integrity of listening. Can you use trust as the foundation of your leadership? Trust has to always be there if you're going to lead others. You have to recognize that you cannot do everything. If you're willing to be in a space where you're willing to cede some of that information or cede some of those aspects that will allow certain things to be developed, then you start to understand that you're developing trust as you grow on. Vulnerability fosters deeper connections. That is so important because sometimes we think of vulnerability as a weakness, and actually, vulnerability is a strength. Vulnerability allows you to be in a space where not only are you elevating possibilities and choices, but then you're starting to position yourself to recognize that by being vulnerable, you're allowing for others to come in. Belief in your team potential builds mutual respect. That goes back to, I think about King Arthur. King Arthur, and you heard the Knights of the Round Table. Now, it could have been a table where it's just, a particular head and everyone else is around trying to kowtow to the king. But King Arthur gave us a very actionable idea to see that if you had a round table, even though you might be the leader, you're giving everyone an ample opportunity to be a participant, then you can actually develop not only in how they will follow you, but even what it is that you develop as a leader. An example: leaders who admit not having all of the answers can inspire accountability. And that's one thing that's so great. When we think about the story of Henry Ford didn't have all the education that all of those individuals who helped him assist and develop that assembly line concept to where it became something that was a worldwide changer. So even Henry Ford in his wisdom, he may not have had school smarts, but he had the ability to listen to others, and that actually helps him to develop his growth and his wealth. Remember that. Now, active and passive listening. There's different styles of listening. And why is that so important to know? Because at times we all, and I'm going to say this again, we all experience both of these. Let's not act like I only do active listening, I only do passive listening. No, every single human being, we all actualize both of them in a respective time frame. And so once we become honorable and respectful of the fact of understanding that, yes, I sometimes actively listen and sometimes I passively listen. And when you can own that, then you have power over it. Now, active listening. Active listening requires demonstrated engagement through verbal affirmations, nonverbal cues, sometimes, such as nodding, maintaining eye contact, and responsive gestures. Sometimes, people play with their hands and all that other good stuff. And, thinking like they're rerun from what's happening, but it's all good. That is part of being actively listening. It also involves dedicating complete focus to the speaker, which I hope you're doing right now, processing their message without distractions, and ensuring a clear understanding of the content and intent behind their words. This practice fosters connection, builds trust, and ensures meaningful communication. So when you're in the space of actively listening, especially if you're developing a team, not just for yourself, but you're actively listening because you can learn more when you listen at times more than whatever it is that you're expressing yourself. So yes, talking is very important, but at times, are you talking without listening? And a lot of human beings do that. Hopefully not you. Passive listening, as you can see in this example through the picture itself, passive listening occurs when the listener participates silently, maybe on your phone. Maybe you're not really giving eye contact as is stated in the previous slide. Maybe, you're figuring out, what you're going to do when you get home when there's someone speaking. That's all passive listening. offering no verbal or nonverbal feedback to the speaker. It represents a one-way communication style with minimal interaction or engagement between the listener and the speaker. Now, the reason why I said that we all do this at times, we all do it. Let's not front. That's a whole, I'm showing my Gen X age. But let us not sit here and act like, oh, I'm just such the perfect. No, none of us are perfect. There are times that we passively listen. Sometimes we could passively listen to the relationships or the individuals that are closest to us, regardless of even dealing with your team members or people in the corporate environment. And so, even in those times when we're like brushing it off and not giving them a cue or not looking at them, we have to recognize those times when we are passively listening. And as I stated earlier, we have to own that. And by owning it, you start to recognize, like, oh, maybe I can minimize the areas in time that I'm doing passive listening. And if I can do that, then I'm more empowered to grow and to develop. Listening beyond words. Deep listening captures intent, emotion, and vision. Now, the reason why I said deep listening even happens when we're watching something that we are interested in. You know how even reality television or that great movie or maybe even a sporting event that you're watching, you're really listening when the moves are happening. You think it's just your eyes that are working, but it's actually your ears working with your eyes. And you're looking and you're very intent and you're so enthralled and you're caught up into it. And then you're deeply listening. Even though you think that you're just only working your eyes, you are listening because you could be getting caught up in the moment, caught up in whatever is going on, and now you're starting to listen beyond words. At times, you can focus on the potential behind ideas and not the personality. Sometimes we can be too personality driven. Sometimes we can be hearing a great idea, but we're going to just brush it off. Oh, such and such over there said that. And you have to be very mindful of that as a leader because the person that could be the smallest person in the room or the person with the least amount of responsibility can end up giving you the idea that can spark innovation, that can spark a possibility, that can spark you to your millions or even your billions. So you got to think about that. Never discount those things that are around. That's how you start to listen beyond words. And reading emotions enhances support and collaboration. Now, at times, I'll be the first one to admit, I'm not necessarily an emotional person. I know certain things about my personality or certain things that I'm very expressive in, that I recognize that I can have or tap into those emotions. But at the same time, when you can read the room, as people say, you can start to position yourself and recognize where are the areas that you can be supportive in others and also to stimulate collaboration. You cannot do everything by yourself. And when you start to recognize that and become empowered by that, then you're really starting to listen beyond words. Non-judgmental listening. Woo, this is so important. As you can see, the little caricature that I put it on the bottom of this particular slide, you can see, when you point fingers at everyone, you think that you and all that other hot noise doesn't work. And too many times we move in that space, but we're ready to be so quick to point a finger at someone that we must recognize that fingers are pointing at us. None of us are perfect. So in your non-judgmental listening, you must be open communication or allow yourself to say that one of the thoughts here, open communication strengthens team cohesion in all facets. If you're not willing to be open, regardless of, if you're caught up in just particular personalities of things or expressions or even beliefs, sometimes you can be repelling possibility. Sometimes you could be repelling a blessing. Sometimes you could be repelling something that is really there to build you up because that person is not just necessarily like you, but they have something in their communication that can help you and accentuate you and actually grow you. And if you're willing to be open to that, regardless of wherever you lie in the position or personality realm, you can actually grow from those possibilities. Judgment-free listening fosters inclusivity of ideas along with people. This allows for when we hear about DEI and diversity and stuff like that. It is good to be diverse. It is good to open up yourself to even possibilities. You can be of one religious strain, and all of a sudden, there's other individuals who have different beliefs, or they believe in the same God, but they just don't do it the way you do. Now, are you being judgmental to them because they don't do it like you? Could you be possibly blocking a possibility of you growing in that because your listening is in a judgmental space instead of being open to all? Just think about that for yourself as you go along. Letting go of control invites authentic dialogue into the various spaces you occupy. Like I shared that particular experience that I had when I had certain individuals come to me and says, you were teaching us something and then you kind of jumped on us. And I had to own that. I said, yeah, I did jump on y'all. But I jumped on y'all from a space of love. Now I can understand by being opening and my listening that maybe how it landed on someone, the feedback was so important. And I was happy for that. And they were even surprised because they thought initially when they were going to give their response to me that I was going to be offensive and be defended. I'm like, no, thank you for that. And then they recognize based upon my response, like, oh, now we see. It's like, no, I love you enough that, it even goes, and we're not getting biblical here, but, God chastises those that he loves. And sometimes you can be in a space where you can be chastising, but at the same time, you can come back in your agape-ness and recognize that you don't have to be as abrupt in certain things. And then your listening becomes open. Now, as an effective listener, an effective listener also positions. Oh, excuse me. Let me remove this. This allow me to move that. Why I can't move that? Okay. An effective listener should also, I'm jacking up that word. Don't mind me. Ability to critically analyze the information being presented. This involves evaluating the content for accuracy, relevance, and logical consistency while considering the context and intent of the speaker. See, that is showing that you're being effective as a listener. Even just now, as I was attempting to move my little toggle, either you can be caught up in something and be like, oh my God, this is it's not perfect. No, life isn't perfect. And even in your listening won't be perfect, but you can still move on and be able to still be in a space of impact and recognize that was a part of the game plan. Additionally, they should be able to draw inferences, connecting implicit ideas or reading between the lines to uncover deeper meanings or unspoken implications. That shows when you're allowing yourself to be effective in your listening. Sometimes we can be so caught up in our own expression or our own feedback that we just right. I'm just right and you're wrong. That's not you being effective as a listener. That's you being actually in a space of defense, which doesn't position you to enhance or to work on those things that you may need to work on. But you're going to continue to move in the same aspect, move in the same way, and hopefully not you. That's going to limit how you're going to be effective. From ideas to actions. Reflective summarization validates contribution. See, when your ability to, actually not so much regurgitate, because sometimes we could be in a space like, say every word that I said back to you. And if you don't say it like that, there becomes an issue. It's like, wait a minute, I'm going to paraphrase or I'm going to surmise what it is that you brought to me based upon, what I heard you articulate. And when you can allow yourself to be expressive or you allow your team members to be in that space, you're going to get more authenticity. Instead of looking for something so rigid and so boxy and so this, that, and the third. And one thing that can happen is that it doesn't allow, certain ideas to manifest itself because then it's like, okay, why should I share that thought with you if you're not allowing me to paraphrase based upon who I am? Aligning your ideas with team mission strengthens focus. Yes, and yes, and yes. See, if we're all going down the same pathway, if we're all working towards the same goal, and everyone is playing their part, I liken it to the days when I coached the football team. and I was a football coach, and I love coaching young men and young ladies. And the reason what was so great was when you can see them go down the field, especially in football, it's 11 individuals, regardless if they're on defense or offense or even special teams. But I'm talking about offense or defense. When you see them either defending the other team from getting their 10 yards, or you're seeing your team go down the row and they're working together, that strengthens you. That makes you feel galvanized. You see that inference point in those areas where you continue to develop those thoughts, and it's just so impactful and powerful to see people move as a cohesive team. And finally, encouraging accountability through open summaries. See, accountability happens when you allow yourself to even delegate certain things, to position yourself in certain thoughts. And by doing so, then you allow people to come back and, give me either a SWOT analysis or give me an assessment of what was accomplished. Now, all of a sudden, when people feel like, wait a minute, you're not helicoptering around them, or you're hovering over them trying to be, some sort of boss. When you're leading people, you're recognizing you don't have to hover over them. You don't have to be a helicopter. If you've hired them, or if they're a positional part of your team or an integral part of your team, allow them to do them so they can be a part of the overall. And that shows your ideas to actions. Building a fear-free feedback culture. Now, this is so important because at times, I'm going back to human behavior. We can sit there and be like, oh, I like feedback. And next, you get the feedback. And next, that person's on their pins and needles like, oh my God, did I express something to them that now, later on they're going to hold it against me, or they're going to put this in, the back burner and waiting to pounce later. And like I gave that example earlier in regards to when I received some feedback, I was happy for it. And the thing that made me so happy about it was that it was good to see that even when they were presenting their feedback, they were presenting their feedback in love because of an impact. And then my response was responding to them from a space of love, even though, we're in a space of mutual respect and mutual accountability. But they knew it's like, oh, now we understood. But then at the same time, you can take and understand, like, wait a minute, got you. So feedback environments thrive on vulnerability and trust. I had to be vulnerable in that space. I had to be willing to be like, yo, oh, okay, thank you for that. And I was there, and trust had to go both ways because they had to trust the fact, like, wait a minute, if I share this with him, I want to see how he's going to take it. Or is he going to just be upset? Or at the same time, trust and mindset is that they have the ability to not so much check me, but to help me in certain areas that I can be able to move forward. And that's actively listening, empower me developing in my power of listening. Honest communication promotes safety and resilience. That's without saying. If someone can pull you to the side, like, can I say something to you with some level of confidence? Some level of, you're not going to sit here and attempt to use this against me later on. But, this, that, and the third, and blah, 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 blah. Now, I'm expressing this out of you because, as I stated earlier, I'm sharing this because I desire for you to be better. Not from to say, oh, I got you. I say this and that. No, no, no. I'm saying this because I desire for you to be better. And when you can take that, like, you know what? I thank you for that. Maybe I need to correct this or twinge that or tweak this. We can always be tweakable. There's nothing wrong, not tweaking as some of the young people may say, but anything that you can tweak effectively allows you to be manifestable. And leader openness inspires team contributions. When you create an environment where people know that you're not so rigid or you're still respectful, it's not that they can come to you with any, just any lollygagging and there's no love of structure. But when they recognize, like, you know what, I can be myself around you. And when people can be themselves around you in a team dynamic, you'll be surprised how inspired they can move, how powerful the culture that you're building is happening, and you're recognizing how to be even more elevated and effective in your listening along with your communication. Inclusive listening to diverse perspectives. This is a big deal. especially what's going on in this current climate. Too many times we only want to, huddle with our own people. And it's like, that's so limiting. There's so many different ways in this global economy, in this global world, even in our country with all the globality. I know that may not necessarily be a word I just created, but even in that, this is supposed to be a melting pot. I know that hopefully one day I'm gonna go visit, the city of New Orleans, and they keep telling me, so you go there, make sure you try some of that gumbo, because it's all kinds of different stuff that makes it rich. It's not just one thing, it's just not one perspective, but it's a whole bunch of things. So think about that when it comes to your listening. Value and diversity fosters innovation and growth. That's the reason why we have so many individuals from other countries who come into this country to work and enhance even technological processes or, different things that we experience by experiencing different diverse cultures. Now think about that. You may be Italian who ends up loving Hindu food, or you may be from Thailand and you end up loving, American food, or you may be an American who loves Chinese food or Thai food. That means that's showing a level of diversity in your palate. So think about that. You can be diverse in your palate. You can be diverse in the areas and individuals that you interact with. Leaders who signal respect by listening to every voice. Please don't minimize other voices just because it may not look like you or be like you. They may have something to say. And cultural exchanges enhance team understanding. That thought just expresses itself as we move on. Listening to align and inspire. This is so important. Why is this so important, Dr. Clarke? Because sometimes we think that we have to speak to be in alignment or we have to speak to inspire. Sometimes when you're listening and then people can see that you've implemented something that someone has expressed to you and it's actually part of it, even if you don't do it all, like someone can express something and you end up taking 50% of it. Be like, wait a minute, you can give the credit where credit's due. It's like, you know what? This person said X, Y, and Z, and they can see, like, wait a minute, my contribution is actually valid. My contribution feels that I'm a part of this thing. Not minimized or diminished or just thrown on the wayside, but I was actually listened to. And that actually empowers yourself, regardless if you're dealing with building a team or being in any type of relationship. It's about transforming those things so your leadership, and you are a leader. Even when you're talking about personal relationships, you're both leaders in the relationship. And if one leader is not listening to the other, then the other one is not being inspired and it's definitely no alignment. So you got to think about that. Vulnerable sharing strengthens team bonds. That goes without saying. If you have the ability to have some sort of empathetic moment or perspective of recognizing that, something that we have to deal with and share, it becomes much more possible to see those areas where the team is actually going to grow. Co-creating solutions fosters collective ownership. Think about that. Too many times we have people who are bosses says, because of me, I did this. Like, come on now. You didn't do all that by yourself. Come on, don't do that. Don't do that. Don't minimize or dismiss what others have contributed. Because I did it. I did it my way. No, 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 no. Co-creating solutions with your team gives everyone that possibility. Says, you know what, when the next project comes or the next idea comes, I can't wait to jump in it. Because I know that I may have part of the gumbo that's going to make it work. And leaders who affirm team strength through active listening. Think about that. People will become empowered around you, regardless of your personal relationship, and especially if you're talking in those respective entrepreneurial or corporate settings. If you're able to do so, you'll be surprised how your team can actually grow and become enhanced and become even better. Now, a proficient listener possesses the ability to grasp the full essence of the information being conveyed, going beyond merely hearing the words. And the reason why I love this particular picture that's on the right side of this slide is that you can look out the window and now you can start making so many interpretations, or you can create a story based upon what you're seeing. And you can be like, okay, what is those two individuals doing? Now, are you proficiently listening? This means they can accurately discern the main ideas, which are the central messages or themes that the speaker aims to communicate. Additionally, they can identify supporting details that elaborate on, clarify, or provide evidence for these main ideas. Now, I remember this when I was a school teacher, and it goes back to, creative writing. And I remember the young people in my respective classes, and you would, you'll give them a prompt or give them a thought, and just watch the young people go. Sometimes you'll get some doozies of responses, but with me sitting there, especially when they had the opportunity to read or to express and articulate what they wrote, you have to be a proficient listener and not to dismiss what they're writing or dismiss what they're doing, but recognizing that, wait a minute, they're becoming empowered because they're sharing their respective thought. The impact on innovation. Safe spaces for ideas unlock creative potential. Reducing judgment enhances experimentation, and deep listening stimulates team confidence. And I think I've touched a little bit on each of these parts in different sections of this presentation. So think about it. Create those safe spaces. Reduce your judgment. You can be a judge and still reduce judgment, and allow your deep listening to stimulate the abilities of those thoughts and maneuvers to happen in the overall concept and development. Trust, cohesion, and performance. Once again, vulnerability builds trust and deepens relationships. Confidence in others motivates excellence. Don't give someone a task that you're not willing for them to work through. Now, you have the right to create the structure, a time frame, or a response, but recognize that you have to allow confidence to work for people to develop in their excellence. And non-judgmental spaces fosters resilience and also results. Remember, you can create resilience. We all will have breakdowns at times, but those breakdowns can move towards glorious breakthroughs and those results that we're ultimately looking for. Because sometimes in those brainstorming sessions, that is that is needed to hash an idea and move it towards action. Now, a skilled listener understands how the pieces of information interconnect, allowing them to recognize the hierarchy of ideas, distinguishing between primary concepts and secondary information that enhances or supports the discussion. They also pay attention to nuances in tone, emphasis, and context, which help in interpreting the speaker's intent and underlying meaning. This comprehensive understanding enables a proficient listener to engage in meaningful dialogue, ask relevant questions, and provide insightful feedback that reflects their deep comprehension of the subject matter. And as you can see, this was a great example in the picture that I presented on this slide on the right-hand side. When you allow everyone to be in a space where we're deeply listening and developing our skills to move towards a proficient listener, then you start to recognize that not only do you have something to say, but you have something that you can absorb from others as well. Practical frameworks. Being vulnerable in your communication rituals, that means you can share challenges. It's okay to share a challenge. We can share a breakdown. Breakdowns are going to happen. Breakdowns are needed. Please don't look for things to be perfect or things are always going to just move in a particular linear type of movement. You need those challenges. That is where you actually grow, through your challenges. Confidence building listening sessions, empowering voices. Do you have those listening sessions with your team? Not just only talk about the project, but sometimes just chew the fat. That's why I recognize that. And I remember that when I used to be part of the corporate world, that, sometimes when you hear the boss or your manager or your supervisor say, you know, we're gonna all go to the bar. And it's not so much you're going to the bar to go drink. It's about sociality. It's about camaraderie. It's about building in those sessions where, you know, I'm getting to see you outside of the office environment or out of this pace that we're at in this particular avenue or venue, but we're in a more relaxed setting. And now if I have the ability to see you beyond just what you do in your title, then I have the ability to start to recognize you have something to say beyond just work. And judgment-free feedback loops, encouraging safe dialogue. And I know I gave that example earlier. And I was happy for that because when you can create a judgment-free feedback loop, that means people can express themselves knowing that there's not going to be any level of retaliation. And that's what's needed, especially going to be effective in your leadership. Essential components for cohesion. As you can see by the particular picture that I added, vulnerability as a trust catalyst. You have to be vulnerable. Cannot emphasize that more than enough. Your vulnerability will actually show your true strength. If you're walking around here like, you know, you don't need someone to talk to, needs and love and support, then you're not being vulnerable. You're actually being weak. So remember that vulnerability is a definite trust catalyst. Confidence in others empowers and inspires. That just says it all by itself. And open communication creates psychological safety. And the reason why I brought that up, because even as a teacher, I never forget when I was going through the processes of learning how to become a teacher or an effective teacher. You know, we had to figure out, you know, all the pedagogy and the different levels of development when you're dealing with as a teacher. And it's very psychological. You think it's just teaching ABCs or teaching mathematics or teaching these respective subjects. No, you're dealing with the psychological development of young people. And see, and when they can feel that they can trust you, they're going to be open to you. And that goes in every realm of the perspective and spectrum. So remember that as you develop and be an effective leader. And once again, I wish to thank you for joining me today. I wish to thank you for being a part of this process. I wish to thank you for recognizing who and what you are as an effective leader. And once again, you know, as you're being stimulative and being a part of these Leaders Live Generously Summit series, I can't wait to even be in the space to learn from some of the other great leaders and teachers as they share their insights and thoughts. Once again, my name is Dr. Gregory Clarke Sr. It has been my honor and pleasure to be with you here today. And remember to live generously through your thoughts and your impact. Peace and love.